Zara stepped off the bus at Pine Valley University, her backpack heavy with books she'd never actually need to read. To everyone around her, she looked like any other college student. Starting a new semester, she had practiced this moment countless times: how to walk, how to smile, even how to look slightly confused while checking her phone for directions. But Zara wasn't from another state or even another country. She was from a planet so far away that Earth's strongest telescopes couldn't even detect it. Her real mission wasn't to get a degree in biology, as her fake student records claimed. She was here to study something much more complex than textbooks could teach: the human mind. Back on her homeworld, everyone could hear each other's thoughts as clearly as spoken words. It was normal, organized, and peaceful. People shared ideas when they wanted to, kept private thoughts to themselves, and never had to guess what someone else was thinking. Her people had been watching Earth for many years, trying to understand why humans acted so strangely compared to other species they'd encountered across the galaxy. The reports from previous observers painted a troubling picture. Humans were described as chaotic, unpredictable, and driven by emotions that made no logical sense. They fought wars over ideas, cried at movies, and made decisions based on feelings rather than facts. To Zara's people, this seemed like a broken way to live. As Zara walked across the campus quad, she decided to test her abilities. She had spent months learning to control her telepathic powers so she wouldn't accidentally overwhelm herself with human thoughts. Slowly, carefully, she opened her mind to listen. The first thought she caught was from a girl sitting under a tree. "I hope Mom's doctor appointment goes well today." The worry in that thought was so genuine, so full of love, that Zara almost stumbled. This wasn't the selfish, violent thinking she'd been warned about. She tuned into more minds around her. A boy walking past was thinking about how to ask someone on a date, nervous but excited. A professor heading to class was worrying about whether his students would understand today's lesson and wondering if he should bring cookies to make them feel more comfortable. A maintenance worker was humming a song in his head while planning his daughter's birthday party. These thoughts weren't chaotic or dangerous. They were warm, full of care for other people. Zara had never experienced anything like it. She found her assigned dorm room and met her roommate, Beth, who immediately started talking about her hometown, her cat, and her plans to become a teacher. While Beth unpacked her things, Zara couldn't help but listen to her thoughts. Beth was thinking about how nervous she was about making friends, how she hoped her new roommate would like her, and how she wanted to make sure everyone felt welcome. "Are you hungry?" Beth asked out loud. "I was thinking of grabbing some pizza. Want to come?" In Beth's mind, Zara could hear the real thought. "She seems nice but quiet. Maybe she's homesick. Food always makes me feel better when I'm sad." This simple act of kindness, driven by empathy for someone she barely knew, made Zara's chest feel tight in a way she'd never experienced before. On her planet, such gestures would be calculated, planned, and announced telepathically. Here, Beth was just naturally caring without expecting anything in return. Over the next few days, Zara attended classes and tried to blend in while secretly studying the humans around her. In her psychology class, she sat in the back row and listened to both the professor's lecture and the students' thoughts. The professor was explaining theories about human behavior, but the real lesson was happening in the minds around her. One student was thinking about her grandmother, who had just been diagnosed with a serious illness. Another was worried about paying for textbooks while working two part-time jobs. A third was excited about a research project he wanted to start that could help clean up ocean pollution. These weren't the simple, self-centered thoughts Zara had expected. Every human mind she encountered was juggling multiple concerns, personal problems, dreams for the future, worries about family members, hopes for making the world better. They carried the weight of other people's happiness as if it were their own responsibility. The most surprising discovery came during lunch in the cafeteria. Zara sat alone, planning to observe from a distance, when she noticed a commotion at a nearby table. A student had spilled his entire tray of food on the floor. Instead of laughing or ignoring him, Several other students immediately got up to help. They didn't know him, and he couldn't do anything for them in return. As Zara listened to their thoughts, she heard a chorus of genuine concern. That's so embarrassing. Poor guy. I remember when that happened to me. Let me help him clean up. I'll share my lunch if he doesn't have money for more food. This spontaneous kindness toward a stranger went against everything Zara had been taught about human nature. Where were the selfish thoughts, the cruel judgments, the violence her people had warned her about? That evening, Zara sat in her dorm room while Beth studied at her desk. She pulled out what looked like a regular laptop but was actually a communication device. Connected to her home planet, she was supposed to send daily reports about human behavior, documenting evidence of their unfitness for galactic society. But as she stared at the blank screen, she didn't know what to write. How could she explain that humans weren't the monsters her people believed them to be? How could she describe the way their thoughts were filled with love, hope, and concern? For others, instead of writing her report, Zara found herself smiling. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt something she hadn't expected. She was happy to be here. These humans, with their messy, complicated, beautiful thoughts, were nothing like what she'd been told. She closed the laptop without sending any message and looked over at Beth, who was quietly studying while thinking about how to help her little brother with his math homework back home. Tomorrow, Zara decided she would explore the strange new world even more deeply. She had a feeling that everything she thought she knew about humans was about to change. 3 weeks into her stay at Pine Valley University, Zara thought she was getting used to human thoughts. She had learned to filter out the constant mental chatter during quiet moments, like when she studied in the library or walked alone across campus. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened during her first crowded lecture. In the main auditorium, Psychology 101 was held in a massive hall that seated 300 students. As Zara climbed the stairs to find an empty seat, she felt the familiar tingle that meant her telepathic abilities were picking up nearby thoughts. She had gotten comfortable listening to 1 or 2 minds at a time, but this was different. This was like walking into a room where 300 people were all talking at once. She sat down and tried to focus on the professor, Dr. Williams, who was setting up his presentation about human behavior patterns. But as soon as she relaxed, her mental barriers, the thoughts hit her like a wave. From the girl next to her, I can't believe Jake hasn't texted me back yet. Does he think I'm being too clingy? Maybe I should just focus on my studies instead of worrying about boys all the time. From the boy in front, Dad's surgery is tomorrow. I should call him tonight. What if something goes wrong? Stop thinking. Like that, everything will be fine. It has to be fine. From across the aisle, this student loan debt is crushing me. Maybe I should drop out and work full-time. But Mom would be so disappointed. She's been saving for my college since I was 5 years old. The thoughts kept coming, layer after layer, creating a symphony of human experience that was both beautiful and overwhelming. Zara gripped her desk as more voices joined the mental chorus. A student near the back was thinking about her little sister who was being bullied at school and wondering how to help her gain confidence. Another was excitedly planning a surprise birthday party for his roommate, mentally going through lists of decorations and cake flavors. Someone else was worried about their elderly grandfather who lived alone and whether they should visit him more often. Dr. Williams began his lecture, but Zara could barely focus on his words. His own thoughts were broadcasting loud and clear. I hope I can make this material interesting for them. These kids have so much on their minds already. Oh no. I can see that girl in the 3rd row looks like she's about to cry. I wonder if she's okay. Should I check on her after class? The professor's genuine concern for his students' well-being added another layer to the overwhelming experience. Zara had never encountered a teacher who worried more about their students' happiness than their own reputation or success. As the lecture continued, Zara found herself experiencing something she hadn't expected. She was starting to feel the emotions behind the thoughts. When the girl next to her worried about her relationship, Zara felt a flutter of anxiety in her own chest. When the boy thought about his father's surgery, She felt a heavy weight of fear and love mixed together. This was completely different from telepathy on her home planet. Their thoughts were shared like passing notes, clear, intentional, and emotionally neutral. Human thoughts came with feelings attached, and those feelings were contagious in a way that made Zara's heart race. During the break, she excused herself and rushed to the bathroom, needing a moment away from the crowd. But even there, she couldn't escape the mental noise. A girl at the sink was thinking about how much she missed her family back home in another country. Another was practicing what she would say to her professor about extending a deadline, because she had been working extra shifts to pay for her textbooks. Zara looked at herself in the mirror and saw something that surprised her. Her eyes were watery, not from sadness, but from being emotionally overwhelmed. She was feeling things she had never experienced before. The weight of other people's problems, the joy of their small victories, the complexity of their relationships. When she returned to the lecture hall, she tried a different approach. Instead of trying to block out the thoughts, she decided to listen more carefully to their patterns. What she discovered amazed her. The thoughts weren't random chaos like her people had described. They were incredibly organized, just in a different way. Each human mind was like a master juggler, keeping multiple concerns in the air at once while still managing to pay attention to the present moment. The girl worried about her boyfriend was also taking detailed notes on the lecture, thinking about her part-time job schedule and planning to call her mother later. The boy, concerned about his father, was simultaneously understanding the psychology concepts being taught and making mental notes to pick up groceries on his way home. Every single human in that room was living multiple lives at once, their own personal struggles, their relationships with others, their academic goals, their family responsibilities, and their dreams for the future. They carried all of this mental weight while still finding ways to be kind to strangers and help their friends. After class, Zara walked slowly back to her dorm, her mind spinning with what she had experienced. She had expected human thoughts to be simple and selfish, but instead they were incredibly complex and surprisingly selfless. Even when people were worried about their own problems, they were constantly thinking about how to help others or make them happy. That evening, she sat with her roommate Beth in the dining hall. Beth was chatting about her day while mentally planning care packages for 3 different friends who were going through tough times. She was worried about her chemistry grade, but was more focused on how to cheer up her friend whose pet had recently died. "You seem quiet tonight," Beth said, interrupting Zara's thoughts. "Everything okay?" In Beth's mind, Zara could hear the real concern. "I hope she's not homesick. Maybe I should invite her to come home with me for the weekend. Mom would love to meet her." And sometimes being around family helps when you're feeling overwhelmed. This simple offer of kindness, coming from someone who barely knew her, made Zara's chest feel warm again. She smiled and nodded, realizing that she was beginning to understand something important about humans. Their thoughts weren't overwhelming because they were chaotic. They were overwhelming because they were so full of love and concern for others. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara felt like she was beginning to see the true beauty in human consciousness. It wasn't perfect or logical, but it was something much more valuable. It was deeply, genuinely caring. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed for Zara. She had been living among humans for 2 months now, slowly getting used to their complex thoughts and emotions. She thought she understood them pretty well, but she was about to learn something that would shake everything she believed about human nature. Zara was walking back from her morning literature class when she heard shouting. From the direction of the campus bridge, students were running toward the commotion, and she could feel a wave of panic and fear spreading through the crowd. Her telepathic abilities picked up fragments of worried thoughts. Someone's in trouble. Call for help. Oh no, not again. She followed the crowd and saw what was happening. A young man was standing on the wrong side of the bridge railing, looking down at the water below. He seemed lost, desperate, and completely alone despite the growing crowd of people trying to talk to him. Campus security had arrived, along with a counselor who was speaking gently to the student. But what amazed Zara wasn't what was happening in front of her eyes. it was what was happening in the minds all around her. She had expected to find thoughts of curiosity, fear, or even excitement at the drama. Instead, she found something completely different. Every single person in that crowd was genuinely worried about a stranger they had never met before. A girl standing near Zara was thinking, "Please don't do this. You matter. Someone loves you." "I promise. I wish I could tell you about my brother, who felt this way last year, and how glad we all are that he got help." A boy who had been complaining about his exam schedule just minutes before was now thinking, "I don't even know this guy, but I want to help somehow. Should I call my mom? She's good at talking to people when they're sad. Maybe she could help." An older student who worked part-time at the campus bookstore was mentally going through all the resources she knew about. There's the counseling center and the support group that meets on Thursdays. "My friend works there. I could get his number. Nobody should have to feel this alone." But it wasn't just the students. Zara could hear the thoughts of everyone who had gathered. A maintenance worker was thinking about his own teenage son at home and how he would want someone to care if his boy was ever in trouble. A professor had canceled her class to come help and was thinking about all the students she had taught over the years who had struggled with similar feelings. The campus security officer's thoughts were especially moving. He wasn't thinking about procedures or protocols. Instead, his mind was focused entirely on one thing. This is someone's child, someone's brother, someone's friend. I have to help him see that tomorrow could be better than today. What struck Zara most was how the crowd stayed quiet and respectful, giving the counselor space to work. In their minds, though, they were all silently sending the same message. "You're not alone. We care about you. Please stay." The young man on the bridge was named Tyler, and as Zara carefully listened to his thoughts, she found a mind in terrible pain. But even in his darkest moment, she could see glimpses of hope. He was thinking about his little sister, wondering if she would miss him. He was remembering a teacher who had been kind to him in high school. He was thinking about a dog he used to pet on his way to class, and how the dog always seemed happy to see him. Tyler's thoughts weren't just about ending his pain. They were about all the connections he had made, however small, with the world around him. Even in his deepest despair, his mind was still capable of love and memory. The counselor kept talking, her voice calm and steady in her mind. Zara could hear years of training and experience, but also something deeper, genuine care for every student she had ever helped. She wasn't just doing her job. She was fighting for Tyler's life because she truly believed it was worth saving. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Tyler slowly climbed back over the railing. The crowd didn't cheer or clap. They just felt collectively relieved. Zara could sense the shared thought that rippled through everyone present. Thank goodness. He's safe, as Tyler was led away by the counselor and paramedics. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but Zara stayed, listening to the thoughts of people as they walked away. She expected them to quickly forget about what had happened and return to their normal concerns. Instead, she found something amazing. Students were already planning how to help. Some were thinking about starting a support group. Others were planning to check on their friends who they knew were struggling. A few were mentally composing messages to family members just to tell them they love them. One girl was thinking, "I should call my roommate. She's been really stressed lately, and I want to make sure she knows I'm here for her." A boy was planning to volunteer at the campus crisis hotline. "Maybe I can't save everyone, but I can at least be there to listen when someone needs to talk." The professor was thinking about adjusting her teaching style. "I need to pay more attention to my students. Sometimes the ones who are struggling most are the ones who hide it best." This response to crisis showed Zara something she had never seen before. When humans witnessed suffering, they didn't just feel bad about it, they felt responsible for helping prevent it in the future. They saw one person's pain as a problem that belonged to everyone. Over the next few days, Zara watched as the campus community responded to what had happened. Tyler's story spread not as gossip, but as a reminder for everyone to be more aware of the people around them. Students started checking on each other more often. Professors began their classes by reminding students about counseling services. The dining hall staff started asking students how they were doing and really listening to the answers. What amazed Zara most was that this wasn't organized by any authority figure. It was just humans naturally responding to a crisis by becoming more caring toward each other. They had taken Tyler's pain and transformed it into a network of support that would help protect others. As Zara sat in her dorm room that night, she realized she had witnessed something her people had never understood about humans. Yes, they were emotional and sometimes unpredictable. But those same emotions that her people saw as weaknesses were actually their greatest strength. Humans didn't just think about problems, they felt them so deeply that they were motivated to solve them. She looked out her window at the campus below, where students were walking to and from evening classes. Each one of them was carrying their own struggles, their own fears, their own hopes. But they were also carrying concern for others, love for their families, and a desire to make the world a little bit better. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Zara smiled, not just because she was happy, but because she was beginning to understand that human chaos was actually a beautiful kind of order. It was the order of people who cared so much about each other that they were willing to feel pain together in order to heal together. By her 4th month on Earth, Zara had developed something she never expected, a genuine friendship with her roommate Beth. What started as careful observation had turned into real connection, and for the first time in her life, Zara understood what it meant to truly care about another person's happiness. Beth had been struggling with a big decision that was keeping her awake at night. She had been accepted to law school, which would make her parents incredibly proud and set her up for a successful career. But her real passion was teaching, specifically working with kids who came from poor families and needed extra support to succeed in school. Zara watched Beth pace around their dorm room, talking through her options out loud while her thoughts revealed the real struggle happening inside her mind. My parents have sacrificed so much for me, Beth was thinking. Dad worked double shifts for years to save money for my education. Mom gave up her own dreams to support our family. How can I disappoint them by choosing a career that pays so little? But then Beth's thoughts would shift to the volunteer work she did at the local elementary school. Those kids need teachers who believe in them. When I see their faces light up when they finally understand something, it feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Money can't buy that feeling. What fascinated Zara was watching Beth's mind work through this conflict. On her home planet, decisions were made logically, weighing facts and choosing the most beneficial outcome. But Beth was considering so many different factors: her gratitude to her parents, her own happiness, the impact she could have on children's lives, financial security, and even how her choice might affect her future family. I keep thinking about Mrs. Rodriguez, Beth said one evening while they sat on their beds eating takeout food. She was my 3rd grade teacher, and she's the reason I love learning. She made me feel smart when everyone else made me feel different because English wasn't my first language. In Beth's thoughts, Zara could see the memory clearly, a young Beth struggling with reading, feeling embarrassed and left behind until one teacher took extra time to help her succeed. That one person's kindness had changed Beth's entire life. Maybe I could make that kind of difference for other kids, Beth continued. But then I think about my parents getting older and maybe needing help with medical bills or the house payment. How can I help them on a teacher's salary? Zara found herself wanting to help Beth in a way that had nothing to do with her mission. She genuinely cared about her friend's happiness and wanted to ease her worry. This was completely new territory for her, feeling invested in someone else's life choices not because she had to, but because she wanted to. What does your heart tell you? Zara asked, using a phrase she had learned from humans but never fully understood until now. Beth smiled. Sadly, my heart says teaching, but my head says law school. What if both could be right? Zara suggested. What if there's a way to honor your parents' sacrifices while still following your passion? This question sparked something in Beth's mind. Over the next few days, Zara watched her friend research different possibilities. Beth discovered she could specialize in education law, helping schools get better funding and protecting students' rights. She could work as a lawyer during the day and volunteer teach in the evenings. She could even start a non-profit organization that provided legal support to teachers and students. The more Beth explored these options, the more excited she became. Her thoughts went from conflicted and worried to creative and hopeful. She was finding a way to combine her sense of duty to her family with her passion for helping children. "I think I figured it out," Beth announced one morning while getting ready for class. "I can go to law school and specialize in cases that help kids and schools. That way, I'm still using my education to make a difference, and I can earn enough to help my parents too." In Beth's mind, Sarah could see the relief and excitement. Beth had found a path that honored all the different parts of herself: her gratitude to her parents, her love for children, her desire to make a difference, and her need for financial security. What amazed Sarah most was realizing that this kind of complex decision-making was happening in millions of human minds every day. People weren't just choosing between good and bad options. They were finding creative ways to honor multiple values at once. They were solving problems that balanced their own needs with their care for others. This was something Sarah's people had never understood about humans. What looked like confusion or inability to make decisions was actually a beautiful process of finding solutions that took care of everyone involved. As Beth prepared for her law school applications, Sarah found herself feeling proud of her friend's choice. She had watched Beth's mind work through one of the most human experiences possible: the struggle between duty and passion, between taking care of yourself and taking care of others. But Sarah's growing connection to Beth was creating a new problem. Every few days, she received messages from her home planet asking for updates on her mission. Her supervisors wanted to know what she had learned about human weaknesses and whether Earth's population posed any threat to galactic peace. The questions felt increasingly wrong to Sarah. How could she explain that human weaknesses were actually strengths? How could she describe the way humans made decisions not just for themselves, but for everyone they cared about? She began to realize that her reports home had been changing without her even noticing. Instead of documenting human flaws, she was writing about human courage. Instead of noting their emotional instability, she was describing their capacity for love and sacrifice. One evening, she received a message that made her stomach drop. Her supervisors were concerned about the tone of her reports. They reminded her that her job was to assess whether humans were safe to contact or too dangerous to allow into the galactic community. "Your recent observations suggest you may be too emotionally involved with your subjects." The message read, "Remember that humans are known for their unpredictable and violent nature. Do not let temporary kindness fool you into believing they are suitable for advanced contact." Sarah stared at the message, thinking about everything she had witnessed. She thought about the students who had cared about Tyler's safety, about Beth's struggle to make a decision that honored everyone she loved, about the countless acts of kindness she saw every day. Her people were wrong about humans, completely, utterly wrong, for the first time since arriving on Earth. Sarah smiled not because she was learning something new about humans, but because she was learning something new about herself. She had found something on Earth that didn't exist on her home planet. The joy of caring about others, not because it was logical or required, but because it felt right. She looked over at Beth, who was working on her law school essay about why she wanted to help children through the legal system. Beth's mind was focused and determined, full of hope for the future and love for the students she hadn't even met yet. That's when Sarah realized she had a choice to make, just like Beth had. She could follow her orders and report what her people wanted to hear, or she could follow her heart and protect the human she had come to love. The smile on her face grew wider as she realized her choice had already been made. The message that changed everything arrived on a cold morning in March, exactly 6 months after Sarah had first stepped foot on Earth. She was sitting in the campus coffee shop, watching Beth excitedly plan her law school interviews, when her communication device buzzed with an urgent signal from her home planet. "Mission complete. Return immediately for debriefing and final assessment of human species. Zara's hands trembled as she read the rest of the message. Her observations would be used by the Galactic Council to decide humanity's fate. If her people deemed humans to unpredictable or dangerous, they would be quietly prevented from advancing technologically. Their space programs would mysteriously fail, their communications would be disrupted, and they would remain isolated on Earth forever. But if the assessment showed humans were truly dangerous, the consequences would be much worse. Zara didn't want to think about what planetary sterilization meant, but she understood the implication. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Beth said, noticing Zara's pale face. "Everything okay?" in Beth's mind. Zara could hear genuine concern mixed with excitement about her upcoming interview at a law school that specialized in children's rights. Beth was thinking about how to explain her passion for helping kids, while also making her parents proud, even in her own moment of happiness. She was worried about her friend. "I'm fine," Zara lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was facing an impossible choice. If she returned home and told the truth about humans, that they were kind, caring, and worthy of joining the galactic community, her people might not believe her. They had centuries of observations suggesting humans were violent and unpredictable. Her positive reports had already raised suspicions about her objectivity. If she lied and reported what her people expected to hear, she would be condemning an entire species that had shown her nothing but kindness. She would be destroying the future of every person she had come to care about. That evening, Zara walked alone across the campus where she had spent the last 6 months learning to be human. She passed the bridge where Tyler had stood in crisis, now decorated with small ribbons and notes from students promising to look out for each other. She walked by the dorm where she had first heard Beth's thoughts about wanting to help her new roommate feel welcome. Every place held memories of human kindness that her people would never understand. She found herself at the elementary school, where Beth volunteered, watching through the window as the evening tutoring session was ending. Inside, she could see Beth helping a young boy with his math homework. The child's thoughts were simple but beautiful. "Miss Beth believes I'm smart. Maybe I really am smart. I want to show Mom my good grade." Beth's thoughts were equally touching. "He's trying so hard. His family works 3 jobs just to pay rent, but he still comes here every day wanting to learn. These kids deserve every chance to succeed." This was what her people didn't understand about humans. Yes, they had problems, poverty, conflict, fear, but they responded to these challenges by helping each other. They turned their pain into compassion and their struggles into strength. Zara pulled out her communication device and stared at it for a long time. She could send her final report and go home to her peaceful, logical world where thoughts were organized and emotions were controlled. She could return to her old life and try to forget everything she had learned about love, friendship, and the beautiful chaos of caring about others, or she could make a different choice, slowly, carefully. Zara began typing her real final report after 6 months of observation. "I have concluded that humans are ready for galactic contact. They possess a unique form of intelligence that combines logic with emotion, creating solutions that benefit entire communities rather than just individuals. Their capacity for growth, adaptation, and care for others makes them valuable potential allies." She paused, knowing that what she wrote next would determine not just humanity's future, but her own. "However, I believe direct contact should be postponed until they develop these qualities further naturally. I recommend continued observation from a distance, with no interference in their development." It wasn't the whole truth, but it would buy humanity time while protecting them from her people's judgment. More importantly, it would let her stay before she could change her mind. Zara deleted her communication protocols and destroyed the quantum transmitter that connected her to home. The small device sparked and went dark, cutting her off from her own people forever. She felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She was now truly alone on an alien world with no way to return home. But as she thought about Beth's friendship, Tyler's recovery, and all the small acts of kindness she witnessed daily, She realized she wasn't really alone at all. The next morning, Beth found her sitting quietly by their dorm room window. "You still seem worried about something," Beth said. "Want to talk about it?" Zara looked at her friend, this human who had welcomed a stranger into her life and cared about her happiness for no reason other than kindness, and made another choice. "I've been thinking about staying here permanently," Zara said. "Not just for college, but making this my home." Beth's face lit up with excitement. "That's wonderful. What changed your mind?" "I realized that home isn't about where you come from," Zara said, the words feeling true as she spoke them. "It's about where you belong." In Beth's thoughts, Zara could hear pure joy. "I'm so happy she's staying. I was worried she might transfer schools. I can't wait to introduce her to my family over summer break. Mom's going to love her." This simple acceptance, this immediate inclusion into Beth's life and family, confirmed everything Zara had learned about humans. They didn't just tolerate differences, they celebrated them. They didn't just accept outsiders, they made them family. Over the following weeks, Zara began building a new life. She changed her major to psychology, inspired by her unique understanding of how minds work. She planned to become a counselor, using her telepathic abilities to help people in ways they would never know about. She volunteered at the crisis center, where her ability to sense people's true feelings helped her connect with those who were struggling. She helped Beth prepare for law school, knowing that her friend would go on to protect countless children through her work. Most importantly, she learned to live with the constant presence of human thoughts and emotions. What had once seemed overwhelming now felt like a beautiful symphony. Millions of minds working together, caring for each other, building a better world one small act of kindness at a time. One evening, as she sat in the campus coffee shop watching students study together, help each other with homework, and simply enjoy each other's company, Zara smiled that same smile that had become her trademark. But now it wasn't just because she was learning about humans. It was because she had become one of them. She pulled out a notebook and began writing, not a report for her home planet, but a journal entry for herself. "Today I watched a girl give her lunch to a classmate who had forgotten to eat. I saw a group of students stay up all night helping their friend prepare for an important exam. I witnessed a professor extend a deadline for a student whose grandmother had passed away." She paused and looked around the coffee shop, her heart full of warmth for these beautiful, complicated, wonderfully human people who had become her family. "I have found something here that exists nowhere else in the galaxy," she continued writing. "I have found a species that chooses love over logic, compassion over convenience, and hope over fear. I have found my home, as the sun set over Pine Valley University." Zara closed her journal and smiled, knowing that she had made the right choice. She was no longer an alien observer studying human nature. She was a human being, learning to love and be loved in return.